So in the last Marvel movie released before Infinity War, we are given our final chance to enjoy a movie that is not oversaturated with characters and has good development and, you know, is a good movie. Visually, this movie was amazing. It was beautiful and like very unapologetically African. Like it just was like, this is the influence, the same way that, you know, Thor had like extreme Nordic influences of just like, this is the way the costumes are gonna look and this is the way these rituals are gonna be taken and carried out, and just like all of these things were like so infused with like actual African culture, even though Wakanda is obviously like not an actual country. It was just really cool that they like created this fictional world that could have so easily taken place within our actual world, and taking the influences from our actual world and seeing how they would have fit into that. Also, the music was great. Like it was such a cool combination of the influence of like traditional African music and drum beats and things like that, but also like friggin' Kendrick Lamar, which was an excellent choice, and it just was really cool. I have been listening to the soundtrack since the movie came out and I am into it. There's lots of cool stuff with spears, just like very like hand-to-hand combat, not like boom, here's an energy blast sort of action, which we're pretty sick of. I'm pretty sick of. But it looked genuinely cool, and you looked at these warriors and you believed that they were warriors and not just like, you know, people who had been given funny costumes with armor on them. The whole like remote driving thing was awesome. I did enjoy Ross's little moment of like staying in while he was being blasted at, but I also loved watching Shuri remote drive the car with her brother literally on top of it when he'd be like, let's go, and then claw his way into the ground so that the car would like shroomf upward and avoid whatever it was supposed to hit, and she was, you know, sibling banter. It was just so fun. I loved Shuri in this movie. I did not know anything about her going in, and now I'm pretty sure I want her to be in like every Marvel movie going forward. Also, like the snarky science genius is one of my favorite tropes of all time, and I literally have never seen a black woman be allowed to be that, and so that was pretty cool. But also I'm just a giant sucker for the snarky science genius. And just the various like technology that she invented, and she's just like bubbly and excited about things the way that I get sometimes, and I'm a little bit right now, but about like science things and look what I created and look how cool this thing is, and hey, if you hit that one more time it'll do something really cool. I'm not recording. You should definitely do that. Like, oh, Shuri, just like what a great younger sister. I want her to be my younger sister, even though both my younger sisters are great. I want a third. For being a movie about a guy who dresses up like a cat and gets superpowers and claws people, it was dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, and it did so very well. The ways that it dealt with like colonialism and oppression were really interesting, especially the one thing that did stand out. It was like a throwaway line. It was during one of the battles, and they're shooting at the Wakandan warriors, and one of them just goes, ugh, guns, how primitive, which is such an interesting subversion, especially like historically, like guns were the like overpowering, overwhelming technology that was brought to Africa to like oppress those people and take their resources. Seeing like outfits and weapons, things that visually we associate with things that we would think of as primitive, that are actually like the technological wonders that are like scoffing at these guns, was really cool. And this sort of like flourishing and resources and culture, even though there's like a little bit of scuffle, like it's still like doing really well. And seeing the Wakandan men who are out in the rest of the world and seeing like, oh my gosh, this is the way that like black people globally are treated, and this is like not fair, we need to do something about it. But it also made for a really compelling villain. Like Killmonger is one of my favorite Marvel villains now, because it takes something that's like a genuine desire. I have never met someone who's like, you know what I would really like? I would like to rule the world someday. Oh man, I really want to steal all these business plans and get rich. Like that is a thing that happens, but it's not like super compelling. I think some of the most compelling Marvel villains that we've had are things that we can relate to. Like Loki is the be all end all of Marvel villains in some people's minds, but just like that need to prove himself and to fit within his family, or to fit without his family, and to just feel like he's enough. And Alexander Pierce as a villain, of someone who like genuinely believes he's doing the right thing to save the world, but is so clearly not. Both of those are really compelling, not like the generic fill-in-the-blank Marvel villain who's like, oh, power hungry, I'm gonna whatever. Killmonger definitely fits in with the like believable, and you care about him, but he sees actual wrongs that are happening, and like the way that a lot of people came into Africa and like colonized it and stripped its resources and mistreated its people horribly. And he basically decides, I'm gonna just put that back on the rest of the world and in a way become the very thing that he hated in the first place. Which is so sad, and it does genuinely happen to people, and people get radicalized, and like that's a thing that occurs, but you still care because it's still like a genuine concern. It's not some like crazy madman's whatever. Like watching it, I wanted him to have a redemption arc. I wanted things to be okay for him. He had, I mean, literally murdered people, but also like I could see how genuine that desire was. And it was just sad to watch it be twisted over the course of the movie. A compelling villain. Still a bad guy, but a compelling villain for sure. I know a lot of this is from the comics, but I think the movie still did a good job of like taking a fictionalized African country that has like supernatural resources and like sees what they would look like if they were allowed to have that for themselves and didn't have to fight for it. And even like the kindness involved in like slowly realizing like this is something that the rest of the world is in desperate need of, and like it is a great sacrifice to themselves to start to share it, but you see a lot of people like who want to start doing that. Yeah, I'm not really entirely sure why Lupita was in this movie. I think her main thing was to like have that theme of like we should share resources with the world. I think by itself having that plot line of like this is the way we've always done it but we need to change was a good choice for having that character in the movie. It did a really good job, I think, doing what Thor was really trying to do. It talked about existing within this monarchy where you have this responsibility handed down to you and you need to own up to it and you need to like be the man your father wants you to be, but also recognize what is good for your country, or I guess in Thor, your planet. And the fact that we see the ways that T'Chaka lets his son down, but T'Challa still shows like a huge amount of respect for his father, but says like this was wrong and you should not have done this. Like there's still a great amount of respect there, but there was clearly a huge mistake that was made that had enormous consequences that are now being passed on to his son. Oh. I'm obviously, no title was passed to me from my parents. Also, I'm not a dude, but like I still thought that this plot line was very compelling. And it showed a lot of T'Challa's character. My actual favorite moment from Civil War, which has, you know, my favorite characters in the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe of like Sam and Bucky and Steve and Nat, was when T'Challa sees Zemo trying to kill himself and he stops him. Because so often in movies where the hero is supposed to be this big moral whatever, instead of having the hero kill the villain just dies by like, you know, falling off a building dramatically or slipping into something or getting his cape caught into a propeller. And so like the audience gets the satisfaction of like, ah, yes, the villain met its end, but like their hero is still heroic and whatever. And this decided not to do that. And I thought they were going to do that. I thought Zemo was going to kill himself and I was like, all right, this thing again. But he sees that and he sees all the pain that he has caused. He's like, no, you have to stay alive and you have to do your sentence and you have to give information and justice has to be served, even though he had every right to do the vigilante, like, you literally murdered my dad, and so I will just like let you kill yourself because that's justified. But you see that throughout this movie when he decides, oh no, we have to bring Ross in here and heal him, even though that means taking a literal CIA agent in and showing him all of your information and exposing yourself, because they had a chance to make him better and they needed to do that. Like that was their moral imperative. And he just so strictly believed that to the point of like not even taking it as a question. And at the end, when Eric is dying, justifiably, because there needed to be that battle and that needed to happen, he brings him up to see the sunrise, which even though he doesn't recognize it as like a full circle metaphorical moment, like is still a very kind gesture. He offers healing to Eric and saying like, we could take care of you, we could make sure you live, but then he honors his decision to let himself die, just like out of respect for this other human being. On the surface, it does contradict a little bit with his treatment of Zemo, but I think if you look at it and see like the reasons that he had sympathy for Eric were genuine ones, and the ways that Eric was treated were unfair, and he sees the mistakes that have been passed down to him from his father, and tries to rectify them by letting Killmonger have like the dignity of a choice, which I thought was beautiful. T'Challa's just a very good character. Someone described him as not angsty Batman, and I really like that. I think he has like such a genuine moral compass, and it comes a lot from like his culture and his family and where he is from. And in a lot of, especially superhero stories, we see people like breaking away from their culture or their family or whatnot, and he just like lives into that so sincerely, and I thought that they did a really great job with this. There has been a lot of discussion about this movie celebrating the fact that it is like the first Black superhero in the MCU, and like does a lot of good things in terms of representation and in terms of like Black culture and that sort of thing. I am super unqualified to talk about this because I'm not Black, and that would be foolish. But I would like to share some resources, boom, 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 about that. And there are some in the description as well. But as you are exploring this information, I would encourage you to hope for a world and work towards a world in which a movie comes out about a Black superhero and it doesn't have to bear all of the social issues of its day, and it doesn't even have to be a phenomenal, amazing movie. It can just be mediocre and it's fine. I would like to live in that kind of future very much.